Split, the first step into former Yugoslavia for the British contingent of the United Nations Protection Force. This is one of 4 main locations which stretch across Croatia and into the heart of Bosnia-Herzegovina. You wouldn't know from looking at life here that the front line of the civil war in this region is less than 100 kilometers away. British supplies all arrive here at Dock 4, but they are the only ones that arrive. Surprisingly, there is no aid for refugees to be found here.
Well, I suppose that's an obvious conclusion to make when you first arrive. However, this centre, this port of Split, is actually where all the British supplies are coordinated. So all the supplies to the British troops start here and then eventually end up with the Cheshires and other units, but eventually end up in places like Vitez. But it's Vitez where the two come together. It's Vitez where the Cheshires pick up the United Nations aid, and it's where they're supported by us.
Before 360 Supply Company could move into this warehouse, the port authorities had left them with empty promises over the removal of 15,000 tons of flour and sugar. The soldiers ended up moving it themselves.
It took some 17 JCBs, 12 men, 72 hours, constantly working to shift it. Each pallet had to be reloaded by hand, 50-kilo bags, and it was a pretty tough time for the boys and girls here. But we cleaned it out with all the rats the size of Jack Russells, and we finally got in here as the ships and the planes started to arrive, just in time.
360 stock everything here, from snow chains to fresh vegetables, prior to it making the journey into Bosnia. Some of it has to travel over 250 kilometers of some of the most challenging terrain ever to have been called a main supply route, or MSR. The men not only work here, but sleep as well, on board the Sebedovia, one of 3 RFA vessels moored alongside the warehouse. Divulja Barracks, also in Split, is the headquarters of the British contingent in Croatia and Bosnia. The former Yugoslav army trashed these blocks when the country broke up. But water and electricity supplies have now been restored and windows replaced. However, for the headquarters staff based here, there is another common problem.
For me personally, it is the command and control aspects of the engineers spread from Split right up to Vitez, and also supporting the convoys up to Tuzla. And with the distance involved and the mountains, just straight communications, you just can't pick up a telephone and talk to somebody. It's just not possible. And when the telephones are in, they sometimes don't work, and that is a fact of life we've had to live with.
Mail to and from the region is said to be irregular, and postal staff are keen to trace where the fault lies. Their present system for testing the service involves posting letters from one BFPO to another overseas and monitoring the delivery time.
What we want to do to try and improve the fault-finding method is to extend the testing system outside our service, which will involve sending letters to people personally within units to try and find out how long it's taken to get there.
We have 2 squadrons here in Tomislavgrad, 3-7 Field Squadron and 4-4 Field Support Squadron. We're about 194 in strength, and our major responsibility is to provide engineer logistic support to the force. My other responsibility is to keep the 2 MSR routes open. Route Triangle, which runs to the north to Proza, and Route Square, which runs east to Jablanica.
The men of 3-5 Engineer Regiment have earned widespread admiration throughout the British UN contingent. Why that has happened will become apparent. Tomislavgrad is their main logistics base in Bosnia, but things here aren't quite as bad as they've been led to believe. This view is fairly widely held among the men here.
From what we saw in the media, we thought it was going to be, shells going off everywhere. Whereas here, it's fairly, mundane. It's not as bad as we thought. We thought we were refugees banging on the doors all the time. We've had a few who've come in, but not so much. Normally they go straight down to the actual refugee centre in TSG as opposed to coming here.
The Serbians are generally that direction over the mountains. The nearest Serbian position to here is, I would say, about 15 kilometres. There has been shelling in a town near here called Livno, which is about 8 kilometres from here. Some of our men were there when that happened, but there was absolutely no injuries. But Tomislavgrad here, there has been nothing up to now.
The first 9 days here saw the soldiers surviving on compo rations, but things have since improved.
Well, basically we've been coming up with the normal food that we get back in Hamel. We're currently operating on fresh. Initially we were on composite rations. We get our fresh from Split on 3 times a week. Normal ration account procedures. So therefore, they do get what they would get back in Hamel. All the lads have appreciated the food. We've had compliments from both OCs, and we just do our best.
Also in Tomislavgrad is the headquarters of the National Support Element, or NSE. It encompasses virtually all of the units involved in the British logistics operation, right through from Split to Vitez.
There have been logistic battalions before with the Parachute Brigade and the Commander Brigade. I think this is the first time we've had a logistic battalion supporting a mechanised formation, and obviously it's the armoured vehicles that the Cheshires are using which add to consumption of engines and major assemblies, spare parts, petrol and so on. And what we're trying to do is provide a service across the entire range of support activities, from pioneer and labour to military police to repair and recovery, supply, transport and also medical services in an integrated battalion structure.
While the logistics support may be their main concern here, other considerations sometimes have to take precedence.
10 miles behind us is the front line. Of course, we've got to deal with young soldiers, 18, right the way through to late 30s. And of course, a lot of them haven't experienced what they're experiencing. For instance, if we get a siren going off, which we do most days here, we've got to know how to react. And it's my job really to get on the ground and try and calm individuals down and put across to them that, the correct way to do things, if you like.
It's only when you travel on the next stage of the main supply route that you begin to appreciate just how difficult the job facing 3-5 Engineer Regiment has been. They have to keep the MSR open. The wind chill factor here has already been as low as -20 degrees. We've now travelled about half an hour out of Tomislavgrad, and as you see, we've come up into the mountains where the temperature is considerably lower. Now, when the men of 3-5 Engineer Regiment aren't digging the roads or widening them, they stay at one of 3 outposts. They are called the Little Chef, Redoubt, and the one behind me, which is called the Happy Eater. The engineers have been widening this road, taking out tight bends and correcting adverse cambers. Redoubt Camp is another of their outposts. Here they work from first to last light, have their dinner and then carry out vehicle maintenance for an hour and a half.
So far we have widened over 60 k's. We have built 5 k's of new track. This would be single track with passing places. We've opened up 3 quarries, and we've also re-levelled 12 k's of the other route square.
I also understand while this has been going on that you've discovered the limitations of Gore-Tex. How did that come about?
Yeah, very much so. Gore-Tex is a wonderful thing, but the other night, myself and the troop commander, we were fortunate enough to be able to work through the night, standing on site in torrential rain. We found, however, it was soaked to the skin, absolutely soaked to the skin by the end of the night. Marvellous kit, but it has its limitations.
The main beneficiaries of the efforts of the engineers have been 17 Squadron RCT from Bielefeld, along with their other attached transport elements from BAOR and UKLF. They are based in Tomislavgrad and have been tasked with providing what's described as a conveyor belt for the UN contingent.
It's actually worked 2 ways. There's both the run from Split using the Mostar Road, which we've done in the last few days, but prior to that we were using a figure of 8 system with stuff coming up here being cross-loaded, transshipped onto other vehicles, whether that was fuel being cross-pumped or containers being cross-loaded, onto vehicles which then did the forward loop.
The forward loop being the journey to Vitez and back. In their first 4 weeks here, the RCT clocked up 300,000 kilometres in a job which sometimes requires nerves of steel.
Yeah, it's quite hairy on some of the mountain roads. That's 2,000 foot sheer drop and not a lot of road space on there. And it's even worse when the weather comes down and there's a lot of snow around.
I think that you've got, I don't know, one of the airiest jobs in a funny sort of way. You're driving along these isolated roads in the middle of nowhere. Do you ever come across the local army who are renowned for having a few too many and going a bit wild?
We do come across them actually, and been a couple of hairy situations where we've driven past them just to let us know that they're there. Not directly aimed at us, it's just their way of saying, you know, we're here.
So do you feel safe?
So far, yes. Yes, it's all the Croatians at the moment. We haven't actually run into any of the Serbians.
We were advised not to film in the towns along the convoy route as it could provoke anger among the local people. Some resent the fact that the United Nations Protection Force is not in Bosnia to use its firepower against the Serbs, or at least it wasn't at the time that this programme was being made. For the RCT, however, their present role keeps them more than occupied.
It's not so much difficult in terms of the complexity of any of the operation, it's more difficult in terms of the terrain, the amount of time we've had to move stuff, and indeed the weather. Today, fortunately, the weather has held off and has been, by their standards, quite pleasant. But it has been pretty icy on the roads, and we've had problems with vehicles. 2 nights ago, couldn't get from here to Split on tarmac, quite apart from going over the mountain road, where we've had convoys snowed in overnight, and we expect plenty more of that to come.
When the weather does take a turn for the worse, it will undoubtedly mean more work for the soldiers in Gorny Vakuf. This is where 7 Armoured Workshop Company are based, along with B Company, the 1st Battalion, 22nd Cheshire Regiment. The factory which the Remy soldiers work and live in is 70 kilometres from Vitez, 180 from Split. The building is more than they could have hoped for. It could have been custom built for the job which they're doing here.
My role in the country is to provide second-line repair and recovery support to all of the British troops here. Actually, we expand on that because we help the UNHCR and any civilian elements that might need help in order to provide the aid effort.
When you say second line, what do you mean?
Well, second-line repair is any engineering which requires more than a certain period of time. We have Remy elements with the regiments and squadrons. They carry out the immediate first-line, we call it first-line repairs. Any large jobs, such as engine changes, overhauls and things like that, then come to me.
For those who are new to the roads of Bosnia, war or no war, the driving standards can take some getting used to. Any master driver who was to be posted here would probably be on a course of Valium within a week. However, Major Heelis prefers to put it in more diplomatic terms.
The most common problem at the moment is accident damage. As you've seen, the snow's coming and we've had a lot of accident repairs to do. And then the recovery vehicles are always very busy. Telecommunications repairs also have kept us working through the night in many instances.
While living conditions here are said to be cramped, at least it's warm and dry in the building. The catering corps certainly have their work cut out, with 381 mouths to feed. The soldiers here are discouraged from leisure time visits to the local town, which is made up of 54% Muslims and 42% Croats. The remaining 4% are various minorities. Just 200 yards from this factory is an HVO, or Bosnian Croat Army building. The decision to stay away from the town is a wise one. The efforts of one armoured field ambulance have ensured that the medical facilities at Gorny Vakuf are far better than those which you might have expected.
Well, we've set up a medical centre here with basically providing first-line medical support for B Company Cheshire and 7 Armoured Workshops actually in this location. We set up a normal routine sick parade daily, morning and evening, and it is run more or less like a peacetime sort of medical centre. We do have an armoured vehicles here, and we have an area responsibility for providing med cover for the different routes in and out of location.
The main problems presented to the medics have come from the local water, which, according to those who know about these things, is said to be harder than that which the soldiers are used to.
I cover all the sort of water testing, rodent side, food hygiene aspects, anything like building structure and such like.
I should imagine that you get quite a few people smiling at you when you talk about environmental hygiene over here. I know that some of the chefs, for example, are working under, shall we say, not the usual conditions. Do you have to compensate for that?
We do, yes. I mean, we have to take into consideration we're under operational circumstances. We don't quite have the clean, shiny places over here that we'd like to have back home.
While some of those here will make it home for Christmas on R&R, the majority will be staying put. But as is so typical of British soldiers in this type of situation, while they might not be exactly happy about it, their camaraderie will no doubt pull them through.
Well, we're going to try our best to celebrate it. Christmas Eve, we're going to do a carol service for the local children. On Christmas Day, we're going to have the traditional lunch. In the afternoon, we're going to have a few sports. Then the following day, we're going to have it's a knockout competition, so it should be quite fun.
Vitez, the final stop on our journey. It's the base for those escorting the UNHCR aid convoys. A 970-strong British battalion group comprising the remainder of the Cheshire Regiment, men of the Royal Irish Regiment and a squadron of 9th 12th Lancers. But again, without the logistic support, the operation here would have ground to a halt.
Well, when we first came here, this was just a school. As you can see, the main building over there used to be the schoolhouse. And where all the vehicles are parked was a football pitch. There's an awful lot of hardcore gone into it to take the weight of the vehicles.
Coming along the main supply route as we have, the local people aren't always as friendly as they could be, shall we say. What about in Vitez? What sort of reception have you had here?
Well, when we first arrived here, the people were very wary. And it's taken some time, but they do accept us now. We have done an awful lot to their local economy. We employ quite a large workforce here. And as you probably know, their wages are very, very low.
The job of transforming this area again fell to the engineers. They had to erect a temporary tent city, which served as accommodation in the early days. But that is set to change with the installation of porter cabins.
There's approximately around about 150, that's including the generators, etc. Time frame for completion depends on a lot. There's obviously the weather's the main concern, but we're trying to get out as many as we can, and to look at a sensible number, we'll say 8 per day.
One of the smallest units to come under the umbrella of the National Support Element is an 8-strong RMP detachment from Senelager and Verl. They had to place tax signs along the whole length of the main supply route, but they also face a more dangerous job, recceing new routes for the British supply lorries.
Well, at the minute we're concerned with getting convoys through Mostar, which means 2 RMP Land Rovers driving 10 minutes in front of the convoy, making sure there's no shelling or artillery fire in Mostar, reporting back on the radio and letting the convoy come through. Obviously, if there's shelling, convoy turns around and harbours up for the night, and we try again the next day.
Contrary to what you might have believed, a mortar round doesn't land at your feet every time you stick your head out of the door in Vitez. There's even a junior ranks club, a former restaurant which has probably never seen so many customers pass through its doors. It provides some light release from events going on outside in the real world. They do say that if you can't take a joke, you shouldn't have joined. And fortunately, even those facing some of the most mundane tasks do manage to maintain their sense of humour.
Well, this is probably the nerve centre of the entire operation behind us. This is the laundry detachment in Vitez. Keeps the morale high, Cheshire's come in, bring the kit in, washed on the same day and back out.
Have you had any nasty incidents since you've been here? Shrinkages, that type of thing?
There's been 1 or 2 very dodgy situations. Very dodgy, yeah. We're on to the local stuff now. The Purcell's run out, so that's a bit dodgy.
Among the ranks of the much heralded Cheshires are 120 men of the Royal Irish Regiment. It has been suggested that they've temporarily lost their identity, at least as far as the media is concerned. Fortunately, they don't seem to have paid too much attention to that.
So far, yeah, we've been fitting in rightly with the boys. Obviously, it is a big change from Lemgo. Just moving in, working with the Cheshires. We worked with them before in Northern Ireland, and it is basically a very big change, but we're settling in okay.
I know that a lot of the guys are going to be here for Christmas. What sort of things are lined up?
Well, hopefully there's a show organised for us, and as per usual, Army tradition, we are going to have a Christmas dinner, hopefully by the officers, so we can get a laugh at them. Basically, yeah, we're getting turkeys and that sent down to us, so hopefully we'll have a good Christmas dinner.
A squadron of the 9th 12th Royal Lancers is also playing a key role in this operation, but they too have been too busy to worry about any lack of publicity.
Well, obviously it's a messed up place, and unfortunately we can't get the aid to those who really need it at the moment because they're the other side of the Serbs. But the lines have opened up and we should be able to do that soon. Having said that, we're not getting moralistic at the moment. We're here to do a job, and we're doing the job that we've been sent to do.
That said, press coverage of Operation Grapple has been embarrassing for the Cheshires, almost as much as it has for other units which have received no coverage.
Yeah, it has. It's wrong. This is the British Army here. All units of the British Army are represented. And a lot of the units, like 17 Transporter Squadron and 35 Engineer Regiment, are doing much more difficult jobs than we're doing. Of course it's wrong, and I have to say that it is a cause of embarrassment for me, and I apologise to those people in those units. We are the British Army here. We are not just one unit.
None of this should detract from the highly dangerous job which the men of Colonel Stewart's regiment are undertaking. Admittedly, the Warrior armoured fighting vehicles are either too heavy or wide to reach certain parts of Bosnia. But the following suggests that it would be unreasonable to expect the crews to travel in any other vehicle to some of the towns which they are reaching.
Well, me being the gunner, I sit on the left-hand side of the turrets up there. And at the time we went up a road in Terb and took up positions looking down the road. We had a call sign in front and we were behind. And we waited there for must have been around about 10 minutes and nothing seemed to happen. And then next thing we knew, there was a loud explosion just next to the wagon. A couple of minutes after that, second round landed around, same again. We radioed in and said we were taking incoming rounds. We were told just to stay where we are and, you know, not to move. And then next thing we knew, the third round had actually hit the side of the wagon, the right-hand side of the wagon, and shook the wagon. That's when we reversed back down the road. When we got down to the bottom of the road, we stopped and examined the piece of the chopping. We'd actually been hit in the front right side of the wagon.
It's that type of incident which will always ensure that it's the Teeth Army which will be the focal point in any operation of this type. But those here know that their job would not be possible without a huge effort on the part of those supporting them.
I think the most amazing thing has been the overwhelming amount of hard work and real effort that everybody over the last 8 or 9 weeks has put into this whole operation. And I really do mean every single man and woman in the force, whatever they've been doing, whether they've been petrol operators, whether they have been ammunition platoon, whether they've been the Cheshires, all the sappers on the mountain, everybody has really put their heart and soul into making sure that this operation is a great success, and I'm eternally grateful to them.